It's a big week for the markets this week, with monetary policy changes likely to be on their way and the big NFP, non-farm payroll release, coming up on Friday. So with persistent rather than temporary inflation now being the focus, we'll take a look at what Goldman Sachs announced at the end of last week about their changing expectations for the Federal Reserve and their actions. And that's not the only thing that may be changing with the Fed. We'll take a look at who's likely to be the next Federal Reserve chair, with a decision likely to come any day now. All of that coming up in today's Market Movers Daily. Hey, I'm Nicholas, welcome to the video. So this week is a busy one for central banks. We've got the US Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, and the Reserve Bank of Australia, along with some other relatively more minor ones. And we're expecting action to be taken. As I mentioned in the last video, it's likely that the Federal Reserve will be announcing tapering, and it may be the case that the Bank of England are going to start raising rates. So those are the two key focuses from the central banks, and those ones are coming up on Wednesday and Thursday. But the issue for the Federal Reserve is that inflation is well above their target, and they see it as being more persistent now, but they originally wanted to have the employment situation improving a lot more. They wanted to reach full employment, and it's unlikely that that's going to be the case before they start to take action. So just a couple of days after the monetary policy decision, we'll get to see how the employment situation is doing as well. That's the NFP release on Friday. So a lot of volatility can be expected, but despite the uncertainty, US stocks are still pushing to all-time highs. Sven Henrik, while sharing a chart of the S&P 500, pointed out sarcastically, inflation is transitory, the now infamous line from almost all major central banks for most of this year. And with inflation now seeming more persistent, Goldman Sachs came out at the end of last week with their own changes in expectations. They previously forecasted that the first rate rise in the US would come in July 2023, and they've now brought that forward an entire year to July 2022. They said this is likely to be the first rise of 0.25% as soon as they finish tapering their asset purchase program. This will then be followed by another rate rise in November 2022, followed by another 2 rate rises the next year. So with inflation now seeming longer term than they first thought, they now see CPI excluding food and energy to be about 4% at the end of tapering. In their words, we think this will make a seamless move from tapering to rate hikes, the path of least resistance. So what do you think is going to happen? Will the Fed announce tapering this week? And do you think that we'll be seeing rate rises already next year? More importantly, do you think it's actually the right thing to do to start tapering and to be raising rates? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Personally, I think they will be announcing tapering this week, and I think it's probably the right thing to do. Of course, they have the issue of wanting to see full employment and maybe risking that a bit. But I think when you consider the urgency for tightening that we're seeing from other policymakers and economists and the warnings we're seeing, you have to think that the Fed will need to get some control over the situation before it gets out of hand and ends up forcing them to take more extreme measures that are more damaging for the long term. So on to the next big announcement that we'll be seeing coming up literally any day now. Who will Joe Biden choose as the next Federal Reserve chair? If we take a look at the odds, it seems Jerome Powell is clearly the front runner for keeping hold of his position, but some people are really backing Brainard. But even if she doesn't get the job as chair, it's very likely that she'll be vice chair for supervision and will therefore have a lot of influence over decisions. So what do we know about her? Well, she's considered to be more of a progressive and prefers to have tighter controls on financial institutions. So as you can imagine, this means that Elizabeth Warren favours her, and she actually came out recently calling Jerome Powell dangerous and suggesting that she would oppose his renomination. Brainard has also been in favour of a Federal Reserve-backed central bank digital currency, which has been a fairly controversial topic that we've discussed a number of times on this channel. She's also been quite vocal on the topic of climate change and how institutions need to be dealing with it. So with her being in a more influential position, we may see more being done in that area. So what are your thoughts? Do you think Biden will stick with Powell, or will he opt for change? We also know how supportive he's been of women in key roles, so could we see the Federal Reserve return to having a female at the head? Or is Powell the right man for the job? Leave a comment, let me know. I personally think that Biden will stick with Powell. We've already seen that Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who was obviously formerly the chair of the Federal Reserve, the last woman in the job, she publicly praised Powell just in the last few days. So while she has Joe Biden's ear on the matter, I think that she could also sway things as well. And changing people in key positions isn't always the right thing to do if you want to achieve stability. Just ask our useless London neighbours Spurs about that today. Anyway, that's all for now for Market Movers Daily. If you like this video and you like this new format, please do hit the thumbs up button to let me know, and leave a comment letting me know your thoughts on this format. If you like it, if you'd like to change it, let me know. We'll be releasing new videos daily, but if you want something to watch already before tomorrow's video, you can check out our last video, which was previewing the Federal Reserve meeting that's coming up this week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.